Mary repeated the quote, ignoring the fact that her longtime family friend, who was also a top-notch surgeon, was nearly in tears. He paced back and forth in the cramped office, his short legs moving so fast it looked like he wasn't walking, but being bounced around by an invisible force. "What more do you want, Mary?" the surgeon cried out. "You have to understand. There's a waiting list for these benefits that goes on forever. Where am I supposed to place them, your seniors? I'm fed up with your elderly demands. I've had it up to here." Aaron looked at her in disbelief. "How can you be so callous, pretending to care about these sick seniors? And my daughter, she could be handicapped. Just drop it. Oh, you yell like you own the place. And I actually work here. What if the boss walks in? What am I supposed to tell Jane and all 4 of my kids, who need to eat?" Mary replied wearily, "No one's going to bother you, and you know that. Professionals are always in demand, so step aside. How did Jack even marry you? You're heartless. Let's just get to the point." Mary frowned. "Where do I have room, filled with retirees, and you with a 17-year-old girl? What do you expect from me? Give her a spot. She has a sports injury," Mary said, never taking her icy stare off the surgeon. "Legally, she's just as entitled as your retirees, the grandmothers and grandfathers. I might have sympathized with them, but my daughter needs treatment now, and it's urgent. She'll join the workforce, maybe even at this clinic, Shiva Medical, where she might actually help people, help those same seniors, and contribute to society. Meanwhile, you, Aaron, just tally your earnings, which, frankly speaking, are nothing more than kickbacks you squeeze from these seniors. Your hands aren't clean, but my daughter might save a life for free. Mary, you should be ashamed, taking from these poor souls with their meager pensions. Let their children help them. I wasn't hired to perform charity work. I have no family to feed. Oh, how you talk, still searching for my conscience. Aren't you embarrassed? Your hands are stained up to your elbows. Yet you complain about my hands, which perform surgeries, and so far, no one has complained about the quality. But your greed, I'm disgusted. We were almost like brothers with your Jack. When did you forget that?" Mary coldly raised her eyebrows. "When you borrowed $100,000 from Jack on his word alone, and he trusted you without any formal agreement, although I warned him. And when it came time to repay, you suddenly claimed poverty because your wife was expecting your 4th child, and there was no money, the kids needed new shoes, and Jack ended up taking them shopping himself, buying shoes and jackets for the fall and some other necessities. I will be forever grateful to him for that. He never brought up the debt again, even though we needed the money. We were living in a shared housing, saving for our own place. Maybe then you felt Jack was like a brother when our car got totaled, and Jack didn't take a dime from you for the repairs. But you and your family went off on a vacation a week later to the Maldives. What was I supposed to think? So my sister told me everything. Couldn't stop praising what a caring Aaron she had, saw that his wife needed a break from the winter, and took her to a never-ending summer. What a gossip, Aaron. If you ask her to be quiet, she just can't, and she breaks out in hives all over. And don't play mind games with me. Tell me about something else. Have you had enough?" Mary interrupted him abruptly. "Or do you want to keep embarrassing me? I already feel a red spot burning on my bald head. My blood pressure's skyrocketing because of you. And how red it turned. Not just a misunderstanding you call a face. Your face forgot how to blush a long time ago. But that's your problem, not mine. I respect and love your Jack and his family. That is, you and Jane and Jack's mother, Anne. God rest her soul." "Enough," Mary said sharply. "Or do you want to list everyone back to Adam and Eve?" "I won't," sighed Aaron. "But I can't help you, not this time. Do you want me to swear on it?" "I'll swear on whatever you want. Listen, it's all full up. Unless someone backs out or heaven forbid something worse happens, I'll slot Jane in right away." "Yes, who would back out?" She sighed sadly. "Here, these spots are fought over every day, and you say they'll back out? Do you really believe that?" "I don't," agreed the surgeon. "I don't believe in it. But in the event of an unfortunate passing, what then?" "Well, what then?" He was perplexed. "Life is life, and it always ends in death, sooner for some, later for others, but always. That's a medical fact, Mary." "Oh, great. What next? Should I hire a hitman to take out these beneficiaries of yours? Are you still philosophizing about who lives and who dies?" Mary was nauseated listening to Aaron. Aaron folded his chubby hands pleadingly. "My dear, what can I do? Don't get worked up before you hear me out. Just listen." He pulled a checkered handkerchief from his pocket and dabbed at his sweaty forehead. "I can put in a good word. and they might take you on as a hospital aide at the hospital where Jane needs to be. No, Mary, not that. I see in your eyes that you're already prepared to spit in my face. And I wouldn't blame you, but it's still too soon, my dear, too soon. It will happen. You have a brilliant education, a doctoral degree, you're a top-tier translator, and there's no one equal to you in the field, Aaron said. But you understand, Mary, in your field of linguistics, you don't have the necessary connections. Yes, and how could you? It's not like you're in orthopedics. But my dear, you'll settle in, you'll become one of them, and they're everywhere. Maybe you'll secure a spot, my love, he conceded. Or will you keep shouting about your translation integrity? I won't, she answered calmly. When can I visit the hospital? You'll read about it in the paper. Aaron finally settled back in his chair. What paper? Mary snapped again, but he raised his hand and looking over her shoulder said mysteriously, Explain it to her, Jack. At that moment, a large warm hand rested on Mary's shoulder. Aaron is right, she heard a familiar deep voice. Mary slowly, afraid to believe her ears, turned around. Behind her stood her husband Jack, with a rasping voice. Jack smiled. Do as Aaron says. Let's go, he urged, pushing her shoulder gently. Mary flinched and woke up. It was already dawn outside. Early birds were chirping. I never understood them, Mary thought with sudden melancholy. I can only tell a raven from a swan and nothing more. Mary felt an overwhelming urge to cry. Lately everything seemed to bring her to tears, but she remembered her late husband's boxing mantra, You won't get up if you keep wallowing. This advice often came in handy. In another room, Susan slept fitfully, sensing even in her sleep someone brewing coffee, be it her husband or daughter, both athletes in their own right. Aaron often said, serious sports are for those who don't really love themselves with injuries, chronic conditions, and other joys. He recalled how he and Jack had met through sports when Jack was rushed from the boxing ring to the surgery table, dazed and confused. Ah, the surgeon gasped, as Jack spat out a tooth and managed a crooked, pained smile. You'll fix me up, buddy. A tough guy from Detroit sticks with you, Aaron responded with a smirk. Can somebody sedate this fool so he shuts up? I need to operate, and he's chatting like he's on a first date. Lucky to have you as a doc, Jack joked through his pain, holding his cracked rib. Mary felt slightly ashamed, remembering how she had scolded her friend in a dream. From that day, they grew not just close but became like family, sharing life's highs and lows and promising never to part, a sentiment that was cut short when Jack and Aaron perished together in a tragic incident at their cabin. Some reckless youths next door decided that their drinking needed a barbecue. The grill mishap led to a fire just as the roof caved in. Jack ran in to help, followed by Aaron, thinking he could still save someone. Miraculously, the elderly woman they tried to rescue survived and even began walking again afterward. Aaron's wife, Jane, was devastated, wandering their apartment in a daze, calling out for Aaron, so lost in grief that Mary thought indifferently she belonged in a hospital under sedation. She knew her numbness was from shock and that the real pain would hit soon. I still have a day or two before I break down. I should pick up some sedatives and maybe something stronger. Sometimes that's better than therapy, she thought. Jane, meanwhile, roamed her apartment until she sat beside Mary and said, You take care of things here. I'm heading to the store. Why? Mary was startled. Jane gripped her wrist with surprising strength. Aaron will be back from his shift soon, and there's no one home. I'll get some meat. Make his favorite stew. Mary nodded slowly. Okay, Jane. Just let me wash up first. This heat is unbearable. From the bathroom, she quickly informed the emergency services of her friend's condition. When Jane saw the paramedics, she looked reproachfully at Mary. Why did you call them? It had to be done, Jane, Mary responded firmly. You're not yourself, they'll help. Jane shook her head. I don't want this. But it's necessary, Mary insisted, feeling the dam of her own pent-up emotions begin to break. Jane, you have kids. Who were you planning to leave them with? It's not time to make orphans. Those words seemed to revive Jane somewhat, even coaxing a small smile. I won't be gone long, just as long as necessary, she replied. I'll stay here, look after the kids, and visit you tomorrow with some oranges. When Jane left with the paramedics, Mary thought wistfully that she'd rather be in Jane's place, having someone else handle the arrangements and just resting. But fate had dealt her a different hand. She went to the kitchen to talk to Jane's younger children, Isaac and Faye, who were stuck at home as their older siblings were delayed at an international airport due to bad weather. The kids, looking like miniature versions of their mother with attentive dark eyes and wavy hair, sat clutched together at the table. They looked up at Mary, expecting her to simplify their suddenly complicated lives. Mary sat across from them, reaching out both hands. "Your mom is very upset," she explained, "and that can make you really sick. To prevent that, we sent her to the hospital where they'll look after her, and she'll be back soon. I'll stay with you for now." The children placed their small hands in hers trustingly. Mary squeezed them gently, wondering how to provide warmth when her own heart felt so cold. But their trusting eyes gave her a sliver of hope. There are no other people's kids, she thought as she fought back tears. Mary alone would handle the funeral arrangements. Jane's doctor, whom Mary managed to visit briefly, confirmed it was too soon for her to be discharged, and that it was best for her not to attend the funeral. "Jane spoke highly of you, and I understand your grief, but she needs more time." "Let her stay then," Mary said as she left the hospital after a brief visit to pass on some essentials and offer a comforting touch. Jane was silent, her sadness deep. "Why so sad?" Mary asked at parting, stroking her friend's head and kissing her forehead. "It's odd," Mary suddenly thought. "I've known her for so many years, and this is the first time I see her hair not done up." "I don't know why, Jane. There's no point in asking. You can turn back time. Just rest and get better. Your kids are waiting for you." The funeral was set for the next day. She left Isaac and Faye at home with the neighbor, Catherine, who agreed to watch them for a fee. However, Catherine seemed too eager to discuss the morbid details of the death. Mary knew her type and typically avoided such people. She wouldn't have called her now, but a sitter was urgently needed. "Don't leave the kids alone. They're just children. Keep them occupied. Read some books, I don't know. Just keep them engaged. There's soup cooling on the stove and more in the fridge. Talk to them, distract them. I'll be back in 2 hours, and for the memorial, whoever wants can remember from home. I don't have time. I have Isaac, Faye, and Jane is coming the day after tomorrow. They didn't let her attend the funeral. You understand, right?" "It's tradition," Catherine lamented. "Why are you depriving the kids of the chance to say goodbye to their dad?" Mary barely suppressed the urge to lash out at Catherine for overstepping. "Children don't need to watch their dad being buried," she said, maintaining her composure. "You can say goodbye from a distance, and don't you dare upset them, or you won't see half the money. I promise you that." The flowers Mary bought on the way to the cemetery clung annoyingly to her wet hands. The vendor offered to wrap them, even suggesting a mourning ribbon. "No need," Mary muttered, finding the notion that grief needed adornment almost blasphemous. Now she regretted not even wrapping them in plain paper. The irritating wet leaves and the bumpy road to the cemetery on the bus added to her frustration. She wished all of this could end quickly. There were whispers about a memorial, but how could there be one when Jane was in a psychiatric facility, leaving 2 kids behind with just Mary to manage everything? "Yes, we're also to blame. We should have offered some help. And what? Jane is really in a psych ward. Maybe she won't even get out, and the kids might end up in foster care if the older ones don't step up. We should have thought about the memorial. Usually the family sets the table, poor Jane. She's lost it." The conversations buzzed around her. Mary suddenly stood up, cutting through the murmurs like slicing through smoke. "You're the ones who belong in a psych ward," she declared loudly and clearly. "And Jane just has a broken heart, which is not surprising. Any of you would feel the same if you lost a spouse and father like Aaron. But Jane will recover. She will be discharged soon, just so you all know." She paused, scanning the somber faces. "You have jobs, kids to raise, but you haven't forgotten how to gossip and then look away. So," she continued, catching her breath, "everyone needs to hold their tongues and honor the memory of the deceased. Anyone who disagrees can get off the bus right now." She sank back into her seat, shifting the flowers aside. The rest of the journey to the cemetery was silent. "Sorry, Aaron," she thought to herself, seeing him off on his final journey. "I don't know how you wanted to be buried, by which tradition, honestly, I didn't have time to think about it. But I don't think it's that important. It's peaceful here, trees grow, and Jack is nearby. If you were best friends here, why would that change there? You were never bored together. You'll find plenty to discuss there too, and don't worry about Jane. The doctor said she'll pull through. She'll get better, take care of the kids, And am here too. If needed, don't worry. Rest easy, my friend. She said nothing aloud. There were no words. What could she say that Jack didn't already know? That she never regretted becoming his wife. That their 20 years together were full of love and tranquility, he knew. And I don't know what to say, she mused. So you will read everything in my heart, as you always did. And Mary, tossing a handful of dirt into Aaron's grave, allowed herself to think that words were unnecessary. He knew everything without them. This was only 6 months ago, but the memories hadn't faded like watercolor on paper. Lily returned from the competition, limping from hip pain, saying, "It's nothing. It'll pass," as if apologizing for distracting her mother from her grief. It would be disrespectful to her father's memory, and it was frightening to see how every morning her mother performed her exercises, brewed coffee, then carefully washed up and even applied mascara. Lily didn't immediately realize that these simple rituals helped Mary keep from dissolving completely, remaining somewhat grounded. And when she did, she understood. Her mother was a fighter, every bit as strong as Olympic champions. A week later, Mary took her daughter to the doctor. "We need to see what's wrong," she said. "Why isn't it getting better?" The diagnosis was severe hip injury. The doctor explained, "I'm surprised she's handling it. It's very painful." "What are the treatment options?" Mary asked tersely. "Well, we can start with injections," the doctor replied. "They're like quick fixes. They relieve symptoms, but don't address the underlying issue. In the long term, a hip replacement is necessary. And without that, no replacement? There's no other option?" Mary felt a pang of fear. "Injections, physical therapy," the doctor patiently explained. "But the joint is deteriorating and will eventually be destroyed. So it's either surgery or potentially a wheelchair. I understand it's a tough decision, but I'd recommend surgery, though we're booked up until the end of the year. There are many patients, mostly older folks." "I understand," Mary nodded. "Are there any other options?" "Well, you could also pay out of pocket, but just so you know, the costs are astronomical, like reaching for the moon," the doctor explained. This conversation felt as significant as the one in her dream, almost as if Aaron had advised her in that dream. Mary frowned, trying to recall. No, nothing came back clearly. "Well, I'll remember it later. For now, I need this coffee." But the coffee was no comfort. From the first sip, there was a strange acidity, and who knows what else was in it. She spat it back into her teacup, thankfully not into the salt shaker she noticed on the windowsill. The newspaper, an utterly redundant item in the digital age, yet Lily, with commendable determination, fetched it from the mailbox every day. "This is my version of a run now, but the joints and muscles must still be worked." The newspaper was mostly advertisements and announcements. Does anyone even read these anymore? Mary suddenly remembered Aaron had mentioned a newspaper that she was supposed to read. She quickly flipped through the pages, and there it was. Now she remembered in detail. A janitorial position was open. Call on weekdays from 10 to 2. They promised to pay. "The pay doesn't matter. We have a different interest in them." "And what are you doing with a translator's resume applying as a janitor?" the department head asked her, surprised. "Does knowing languages interfere with cleaning?" Mary almost blurted out, but caught herself just in time. That biting edge, not that it greatly hindered her, but it did cause some inconvenience at times in stressful situations, and Mary couldn't help it, the down-to-earth girl from a small southern town who never held back words when it wasn't appropriate. Now she needed to appear more vulnerable, a widow overwhelmed by grief. "My husband passed," she said quietly, looking down, "and he was the main provider for our daughter and me, and now money is tight. It's tough, so I need a side job." "Of course, but why here? You could teach or tutor," he suggested, echoing Aaron's advice from her dream. Mary saw her opportunity and took a deep breath. "I currently don't have the energy for intellectual tasks. A family friend always spoke highly of your hospital, said that the doctors here are top-notch, and it seems like the management is honest, not skimming off the top." "Ah, daydreaming," he said. "And he, was treated here, your friend?" "He worked here," she replied slowly, as if reluctantly. "You might know him, Aaron Goldman." "Aaron Goldman," the department head perked up, jumping onto the chair with enthusiasm. "What a surgeon he was, truly irreplaceable. I couldn't even attend the funeral, I was so grief-stricken, cried for days. What a loss, I still can't believe it, let alone find a replacement. And he was a friend of your family. And now you're here? Of course, of course. We'll hire you, but I feel awkward asking. But do you need money? Aaron's friends are my friends. I need money, Mary replied. But more importantly, I need a medical slot more urgently. It's fully booked until the end of the year. It's for my daughter. She's an athlete with serious injuries. She's on painkillers now, but that's not a real treatment. She needs surgery. So let's do this, Mary. Yes, Mary, you work for us since you need the money. And about the medical slot, I promise to think about it. Maybe something can be done. It's not easy. But as an employee, there are some benefits. Mary smiled as the head of the department nodded vigorously, suddenly resembling an enthusiastic supporter. Our beloved Goldman always said that. May his memory be honored. Don't you want to pay your respects, Mary? I can't. I have 2 more places to visit today. It's inconvenient. Yes, of course. Tell me, does Aaron's wife need anything? She has everything she needs, Mary said firmly, nearly telling the truth. Jane had everything but the will to live. After the interview, Mary stopped by her friend's house. They had already discharged her. Her condition is stable now, the doctor explained, but she needs support to overcome her grief. I prescribed mild antidepressants. The main thing is to ensure she takes them. Jane didn't forget to take them. She just didn't want to. So it wasn't surprising that Mary found her slumped on the couch in a worn tracksuit with untidy hair. You look unwell, she observed her tired eyes. No, don't worry. I feel normal. Then why do you look so disheveled? Look at your jacket and your hair. When did you last comb it? You need a manicure. It's simply unhygienic to have such unkempt nails. What manicure? Jane shrugged. You mean a basic one? If you insist, I'll go without polish, but at least let me trim your nails. Come on, I'll make an appointment for you. No, she hugged her knees and bit into the blanket. I don't need anything, Mary. Thanks for your kindness, but I really don't want anything. Jane raised her voice, and Mary, losing patience, retorted, What kind of mess have you let yourself become? Wallowing in self-pity. You have 2 kids to think about. Where are your antidepressants? Why aren't you taking them? I don't want to, Mary. Don't shout. I beg you. My head is throbbing. I'll send you back to the clinic again, she threatened softly, if they didn't help you properly the first time. She noticed how gaunt she had become. Her tracksuit hung on her like a baggy cloak, her once luxurious black hair matted and greasy. Damn it, Mary, not fully realizing what she was doing, swung and slapped her friend hard. Jane suddenly collapsed back onto the couch, looking bewilderedly at Mary, before covering her face with her hands and crying loudly. You're crying, Mary sighed. That's good. It means you're alive. I'll get you some water. Go wash up in the bathroom, and then we'll see about feeding you and giving you a good pill, a luxurious golden bath for Jane. Mary spared no expense, grabbing everything that came to hand, bath foam, shower gel, and then an elegant container with sea salt, into which she poured almost half. Jane, she called. Come and bathe, everything is ready. But Jane continued to cry, unable to stop her flow of tears. It was her first time crying, Mary guessed, and that's when it all burst out. Mary then poured her friend a glass of cold water and forced her to drink. There, you'll feel better soon. Get up, let's wash up. Mary helped her to the bathroom door and inside. Jane, I'll sit here with you. It's scary to leave you alone. Are you taking off your clothes yourself, or shall I help? By myself, Jane replied, and Mary, turning demonstratively away, was faced with a wall beautifully tiled and an artificial ficus in a pot. Behind her, there was a soft splash. Jane had settled into the bath up to her chin, covered in foam. Feels good, she whispered. Mary took a face mask off the shelf and handed it to her friend. Put this on. You look terrifying. Well, I might scare children, but why others? After about an hour, Jane and Mary were sitting in the kitchen. The hostess, now fresh and combed, was hungrily eating pancakes prepared by her friend. I didn't even know I was this hungry, she said with her mouth full. I can't remember the last time I ate. It's embarrassing how low I've let myself get. But the main thing now is to pull yourself together. You'll eat your medicine, sleep like a human, and hold on for the sake of your children. Listen, tomorrow I'll go to the store, prepare a meal for the kids. I'll make a soup, a main dish, a salad, and some fruits for dessert. They haven't eaten homemade food in so long. It's embarrassing. And I'll buy some sweets from the bakery. Take any. You're welcome to join us. Mary smiled as her cheeks blushed, not turning away from the lovely display of the department store, although they paid her more than other aides who worked no less hard. Stop it, really, she would argue, when others mentioned feeling uncomfortable about earning more. I've been head here for 20 years, and I could count on one hand the real workers we've had. Don't lose hope, she said as she prepared to leave. We might have a slot open next month. A grandma caught bronchitis. She might not recover in time for surgery. I'll let you know in advance. Thank you, she smiled. I'll do my best. I still need to wipe the floor in room 9, where a man lies in a coma. As for Jane, she decided to look for a job not for the money, as Aaron had left them enough, but to be among people and come back to life. No, don't try to dissuade me, she stopped Mary with a gesture, already having made up her mind. Mary noticed her friend's clean, well-groomed nails, covered with understated light polish, and the elegant silver ring on her finger. Even got a manicure, Mary observed. Jane mentioned that she even prepared a delicious dinner. Lily was also invited, but she didn't want to come as a guest, so I dropped her off on the way and warned her that you might be a bit late. So we're going to dinner at my place, Jane said, looking critically at herself and then at Mary. Look at yourself, thin as a herring. Let's go, I'll feed you. Mary didn't argue. She leaned back in her seat and closed her eyes. She was strong, but even the strongest sometimes want someone to take care of them, like being picked up after work, taken to dinner, and not accepting any objections. Where are the kids? Mary asked, already on her second plate of the main dish. I sent them to camp for a week, Jane replied. They'll be home at the start of the quarter, and I'll get myself sorted out by then. Patch up here, patch up there, and I even went for a massage today and got into this Fido barrel. It really started to relax me. I even felt like living. You're doing great, Mary praised her. You've become so beautiful, and it's great that you took control. Have you? Suddenly asked Jane, looking deeply into Mary's soul with her dark eyes as only she could. What about me? Mary hesitated. I'm holding on too, see? I work. I also want to be around people. Jane tapped her glass with her fingertip. Why didn't you tell me that Lily needed surgery? Lily let it slip, Mary frowned. Don't scold her. She thought I knew everything. She was surprised you hadn't told me. Why? I would have paid for everything right away. You know, Mary shrugged. I know, dear Jane, but tell me, even if shells were whistling over your head, you wouldn't flinch. You wouldn't care. And then, you understand, first the funeral, then Lily. It even seemed to me that I was crawling through some dark corridor, and it never ended. I kept thinking there must be a way out. Then I dreamt of your Aaron and my Jack. They gave me some advice. So that's the story, Mary concluded. And you know it all came true. I saw an advertisement in the paper. The head of the department respects me and he hired me without any fuss. Said maybe next month the operation could happen. Suddenly she remembered the Italian woman she had overheard today. You see, I overheard something. I was mopping the floors in the ward and there was. Jane listened very attentively, not interrupting once. An Italian, you say? She mused thoughtfully. That's interesting, you know. Aaron told me about a year ago. A friend of his, a very talented plastic surgeon. Aaron said he works like an artist, not just churning out cookie-cutter noses. And his wife is Italian, just like the one you described. Remember, Aaron went to a conference. It was in Rome, right? Mary confirmed. Yes, in Rome, and there he accidentally met this wife with a young man whom she called Renata, and she was hanging all over him. Aaron then thought that meant she had divorced her husband, but now it turns out no. She had been cheating on him for a long time, and this Renata was aware. But about the broken brakes, you really should have told me if it starts. Mary shrugged. But it's not a fact yet. Maybe the equipment failed, or something else, and his injury is serious. If he returns to this world, it's still unknown how he may be affected. I'll find out more tomorrow when I go to work. Mary stretched and stood up from the table. Let's clear the table, and then I'll take you home. It's almost midnight. I need to get some sleep, Jane promised. Leave the dishes. I'll clean up myself. I have nowhere to rush tomorrow. My next shift will make things clearer. Mary, peeking into room 9, saw that the former coma patient was now sitting up in bed, enjoying his breakfast. Quick recovery, she commented briefly, congratulating him on his return. Yes, he smiled. Had a car crash, thought brake failures were just in movies, but here we are. Honestly, you might want to check the car. Make sure it wasn't tampered with. Maybe it was sabotage, he suggested, slightly concerned. Mary shrugged. A plastic surgeon might have enemies. You should talk to the department head. Check the ward's surveillance footage. Might find something useful. The chief, waving his hands frantically, mentioned the patient was demanding to see the camera footage, claiming Mary had suggested it. Yes, and he's bold enough to assert that you advised him. I had to comply. I didn't believe it at first. But you shouldn't have disbelieved, Mary calmly replied. I just heard it. Surely the recording is saved here. His wife was here. What are you? I beg you. You heard how she was arranging a meeting with a hairstylist, how she tried to kill her husband. Stop breaking, but you have to warn a person anyway. Let him find out and decide for himself. As Mary was leaving, the chief suddenly called out, The grandma for the surgery, so we'll prepare her. We'll put her in for examination right now and then straight to the surgery. From that moment on, Mary completely forgot about room 9, too elated to think about someone else's drama. Perhaps that's why she paid no attention to the large bouquet of flowers delivered by a courier in the evening. Probably for my daughter, she puzzled. The courier confirmed the address and recipient's name. It's your name, he said. So will you take the bouquet or should I throw it away? Give it here, Mary said indifferently, placing the flowers in the first vase she came across, even forgetting to add water. In the morning, Lily was due for surgery, and Mary couldn't think of anything else. Sensing her anxiety, Jane rushed over with a whole arsenal of sedatives, some herbal teas, and sweets. Everything will be fine, her friend assured lightly, bustling around the kitchen, brewing her herbal tea, and laying out the cakes on plates. You'll see, Lily is young and an athlete. Her body is strong. Drink the tea. It works better than any sleeping pill. It's still my mom's recipe. And Mary drank this miraculous concoction, listening to her friend's voice, and didn't even notice how she dozed off. She only woke up once when Jane placed a pillow under her head and covered her with a blanket. Sleep, sleep, she whispered. I'll lock up. Everything will be fine. In the morning, Mary arrived at work earlier than usual, anxious to learn about her daughter. The chief was already waiting for her on the first floor. Everything is fine, he said, holding Mary's hands. In a month, she'll be jumping, running, and dancing. But honestly, take my friendly advice. Forget about major sports. She doesn't even want to return to it herself, Mary sighed with relief. But still, thank you for the advice, and most importantly for the surgery slot. We will have a separate conversation about this. They asked me not to tell you this until after the surgery, but now it's possible, you see. All the treatments for Lily were paid for by the patient from room 9, obviously in gratitude for your warning and potentially saving his life. I probably should thank him, she mumbled, feeling unprepared. I was greeted by the patient with such a wide, joyful smile that all the awkwardness immediately evaporated. It worked out. He clapped his hands. I've already found out everything. Lily will be completely fine. Then she will need rehabilitation. But don't worry. There's a luxurious rehab center. We'll place her there. And by the way, did you like the flowers? You thought, Mary, that it was from someone among Lily's friends. No, he smiled modestly. I wanted to include my business card, but just in time I remembered that you don't even know my name. My name is Alex, and I already know yours. Well then, Mary smiled. I should say thank you, but I feel that's somehow too little. I don't even know how to thank you. Lily will be discharged in a couple of weeks, Alex said seriously. Then rehab, maybe another 2 months, but after that, promise me that you'll go out for coffee with me. Promise? Mary left room 9, calm and smiling. Everything will be fine with Lily, and although the rehabilitation will take quite some time, in the end her daughter will be healthy, and then they will go for coffee with Alex, and maybe fate will offer her a new friend, or who knows, maybe a beloved man. This will be known later, but for now, there's endless happiness from the fact that her daughter is healthy and a warm anticipation of a future meeting with this almost unknown, but such an amazing person. But that's a completely different story.